My name is Paul DeBazio. I'm one of the board members for United Way Next. I've served for the last couple of years and currently serving on the executive committee as the vice chair or incoming chair. And I see that we have our current chair, Ed Rivera, joining us, and our immediate past chair, Barbara Edmonds. So we've got great board representation from existing board members. And really, this social hour is to meet our newest board members. And so we've got 4 of those 5 currently on, with one other hoping to join us soon. And we've got a few of our United Way Next members joining us as well. So just again, a welcome. Good to see folks on today. And for me, United Way Next is really all about making connections and reconnecting, in particular, with my United Way colleagues over a 20-year career with United Way. But I think it's equally important to connect people who may not know each other. And that's really what this social hour is meant to be, an opportunity to meet our newest board members and hopefully make some new friends, meet some new people. And so I would like to start by asking our newest board members to share their journey. It's sort of a snapshot, maybe 3 minutes each, their United Way journey and where they're at today. Because for most folks, they've moved on from United Way, which is why they're part of United Way Next as well. And so again, we've got 4 of those new board members, and I'm going to start with Terry Tolan and then go to David after that. So Terry, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Glad to see everyone. I am Terry Tolan. I had about a 23, 24-year United Way career, 3 local United Ways. Started on the resource development side, and then spent 15 years as the CEO of United Way of Kentucky, the association of the, at that time, 25 United Ways in the state of Kentucky. So I left the United Way system in 2011 to head up the Kentucky Governor's Office of Early Childhood, and kind of an offshoot of my policy work while I was in the state association. And have been a member of United Way Retirees Association, United Way Next, for many, many years in my role at United Way of Kentucky, and have continued to be a member. I'm one of those people who are confused about whether I'm a retiree or an alumni. I'm actually still doing consulting with the nonprofit sector, doing a lot of strategic planning and some consulting in the early childhood arena as well. So I'm kind of on the fence about whether I'm retired or not. I don't think of myself as a retiree.
Great, thanks, Terry. And David next, and then I'll be going to Jeffrey.
Thank you, Paul. So I started my United Way career as a loan executive down in Charleston, South Carolina. Was there for 14 years on the fundraising side, and then headed back to my hometown, which is Fort Wayne, Indiana, where I was the CEO there for 5 years. And then after really accomplishing what we set out to do, left United Way and started my own consulting firm, and then got a phone call from one of our United Way peers that said, "Hey, do you want to take this CEO job?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not moving to Gary, Indiana." And she said, "Well, would you do it on an interim basis?" And it just so happened that right about that same time, Amber, because I joined United Way Retirees Association after I had left, and Amber sent me this invitation around interim leadership, and I had the chance to meet Jeffrey Wilcox there as well. And so for the last 5 years, I've been serving in interim roles for mainly United Ways, but other organizations, and currently serving as the interim chief development officer for the United Way in Winston-Salem. So, but it's good to see everybody here. And one of the reasons I'm engaged with United Way Next is because you get to see friends that you haven't seen in a long time, such as Amber and Teresa, who Teresa and I went through the ExecuStep program 15 years ago. So it's good to see some old friends.
Great, thanks, David. And for folks who heard David say United Way Retiree Association, that was the name of this group just a couple years back when you did get that call from Amber. It has been since rebranded as United Way Next, so that's what you see here. But David, thanks for that introduction as well. And Jeffrey, we'll ask you to introduce yourself, and then we'll turn to Kerri.
Thanks, Paul. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
I'm Jeffrey Wilcox. I go by the pronouns he, him. I'm located in the territorial lands of the Salesian people we call Seattle, Washington. I started my career here several years ago, and I came up through the marketing ranks. I began in marketing at the United Way of King County in Seattle, and then I became the Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Valley of the Sun United Way in Phoenix, Arizona. It was at that time I decided the way we spend our money is directly proportional to the way we make our money. And so I'm a marketer who chose to go in the planning and allocations route and became the Senior Vice President of Community Impact in Phoenix. And from there, I became the Senior Vice President of Community Impact in the great city of Los Angeles. And so all of those years, I saw what was happening to the contributions United Way was making to organizations that failed at succession planning, that had underpaid their staff, had thought their executive director was going to be there forever. And I also saw really good execs who'd been kicked to the curb. And I wanted to do something about it. So 22 years ago, I formed my own company. And the goal was to, instead of raising and allocating a pool of financial capital, was to create a pool of human capital for organizations to begin to have solutions to their leadership continuity issues. And today, Third Sector Company is the largest trainer and provider of interim executive leaders in the United States. We've helped over 900 nonprofit organizations in transition, and many of the people who are around there. But I got to tell you, the entire company was developed and it's still run by somebody who believes in community impact and community problem-solving model, and it continues to serve me well today. The reason why I'm part of this great organization is because of the faces on the screen. The greatest things I've had in life are the people I work with to make a difference. And the United Way Next is still doing that, and I look forward to doing it with you.
Great, thank you, Jeffrey. And we're going to have Kerri introduce herself, and then Rodney, I see you've joined. Thank you. After Kerri, we'll ask you to just introduce yourself and share your journey with our guest today. So Kerri first, then Rodney.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kerri Strauss. My United Way journey started actually as an intern. I was with the United Way of Berks County in Reading, Pennsylvania for a year, and then was hired on after I graduated with my master's in social work to be the volunteer center program manager there for 3 years. Then when my family relocated to the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, I started with the United Way of Bradford County, which at the time was an all-volunteer run, managed United Way. So I was their first ever staff. I started at 5 hours a week and then worked up to 40 hours. And now they have 4 people that are running that United Way, and they've really grown and expanded. So I held that role as the executive director for 10 years and then stepped down 3 years ago to start my own consulting business, Kerri Strauss Consulting. And from that, I actually got into interim work. So I served for a year as a interim executive director of the United Way of Greater Union County in Elizabeth, New Jersey, just outside of New York City. And now I'm serving as an interim for the Editorial Freelancers Association, which is based out of New York City, but I work remotely in Pennsylvania. Very, interested in always staying involved and connected to United Way. It's been a big part of my life for 20 years and something that I think I'll always be a part of. And I see the impact that every United Way has in communities. And I love all the people that are, a part of United Ways. And I'm really excited to be with all of you today and to get to learn more about everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Kerri. And certainly last but not least, Rodney Prunty. Rodney, if you could just introduce yourself to our guests in your United Way journey and where you're at today.
Thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's afternoon everywhere for the most part. So Rodney Prunty, President and CEO, United Way of North Central New Mexico, headquartered in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So my United Way journey. So I have 20 years of experience in the nonprofit sector in direct service. And that's actually what my undergraduate degree is in human services. And so I came to know my local United Way because I'm originally from the Midwest. So I was born in St. Louis, but raised in Rockford, Illinois. That was my first United Way. And I was the director of a program that was funded by that United Way. And so, as you know, during campaign, I was the agency representative. I'd go out, I would share the good news about why it's so important to support United Way. And this was about the year 2000, and I'm at UPS with one of my participants, and I'm hearing the United Way rep give the spiel about United Way and the impact it has across communities, bringing various sectors together. And I just had one of those kind of watershed moments where you think to yourself, you know what? I want to work for that organization. And so that was just one of those little mental notes I made in the back of my mind. And 7 years later, I had the opportunity to work for United Way of Rock River Valley in Rockford, Illinois. And I started out in campaign because that's how they knew me. You know, typically with my experience, you would put me in community impact. But because I was going out on campaign giving presentations, I came in as a fundraiser and loved it. Did that for about 3 years. Then 3 years after that, or during my first 3 years, the leadership changed, and the CEO there, he was a no-nonsense kind of guy, a very well-known person in the community. But he felt like, you know, the organization needs to be flatter. He would always say, this is not a bank. We're not going to have a vice president of this, this, and this. And so he promoted me 3 years later to be the vice president of United Way of Rock River Valley, which really meant kind of a COO role, if you will. So I did that for about 3 years, really got that United Way front and center in the education space when it came to early childhood education, early grade reading, looking at some collective impact initiatives. That's how I actually got to know Ed, which I'll mention him later. But so I did that for about 3 years, and then I became CEO of United Way of Racine County in Racine, Wisconsin in 2013. Did a lot of great work there, really focused on community schools. So the first set of community schools were established in Racine County as a result of that. Also did some work in the DEI space, community conversations, things like that. Fast forward to 2016, go on a family vacation, and we drive from Wisconsin to California, spent some time in San Diego, and on the drive back to Wisconsin, we stopped off in Albuquerque and fell in love with it. It's not for everybody, but it's definitely for us. We really love the aesthetic beauty, the culture, the food, everything. And so when my great friend Ed announced his retirement from Miss United Way in late 2018, early 2019, reached out to him and he said, throw your hat in the ring. And I said, I certainly will do that. And long story short, I was fortunate enough to become president and CEO of This United Way in June of 2019. I've been here ever since. And why I am excited to be part of the United Way Next board has to do with one person who is not on the screen, Carole Peters. I got to know her very well when she was the CEO of the United Way in McHenry County when I was in Racine. She tells a story. She was onboarded at the Great Rivers Conference, and I taught a session for new United Way professionals, and that's how she and I got to know each other very well. And then also, of course, Ed, knowing that Ed is the chair of the board and has been on the board, and just my experience with Ed, who I hold in high regard, it was a no-brainer for me to jump at the opportunity to participate. So I'm happy to be here this afternoon. Apologize for being a little bit tardy. A meeting ran over, but I'm just glad to see everybody's faces on the screen.
Great. Thanks, Rodney. And thanks to all of our new board members for their introduction and background. It's really what makes United Way Next special, right? This is a special board. You see the diversity of the board. You see the diversity of experiences, level and backgrounds and paths up through the United Way system. So what we're going to do now is break into two groups, Caitlin. I think we could have two of our board members, new board members in one group and three in another, and have some of our guests put into those breakout rooms. They can learn a little bit more, and one, they can learn about you as well. But ask questions. They are new board members, but that does not mean they're new to United Way Next. They've been engaged, for a couple of years with United Way Next in different capacities, so they could share a little bit about those experiences. Because again, for me, my connection to United Way Next is about reconnecting and connecting with like-minded people from across the network. And so some I've known and many are new friends as well. So take the time. We'll break off into two different groups for about 15 minutes. Learn a little bit more about each other, share. It's a great group of people to learn from and to identify opportunities for your own personal growth to connect us with the United Way Next board members. So hopefully you'll see that in the breakout as well. We'll come back and then just share some insights and what you learned. And so if you weren't in with a couple of the board members, you may hear some insights from the others. That way there we can kind of get the experience across the board. But and Ed, we have a minute here, and Ed, you're our current board chair. Maybe you could also just do a plug for the United Way Next and the board, and anything else you might want to say about today's session, meeting our newest board members.
Well, just a welcome to everyone, and thank you for joining us. Like many of you have said, to me, the value of when I said yes to Deborah Bale when she invited me to join the board, is I felt that it was a great opportunity to stay connected, but also to stay meaningful. And at that time, the focus was on retirees. But I'm really delighted that because of Barbara Edmonds' incredible leadership over several years, not just in her board chair year, she put together a plan that really took us down the meaningful path. And I can't be more excited than what I think is coming in front of us and what's already happened in terms of the opportunity to serve the network in various capacities and in very meaningful ways. Paul will be leading some conversations, hopefully, and some efforts over time to really increasingly align what we do at Next with United Way Worldwide, and that may come up in the breakouts. But perhaps there'll be time later for Paul to talk a little bit more about that. But one of our big goals is to make sure that we are filling the most important needs that the network would like us to do. Over time, we've responded, and Amber, you can jump in here anytime, but when Amber was serving as our CEO, she was very active in taking a lot of calls from both Worldwide and the network about opportunities or gaps that were going on. And we tried to plug in there as the circumstance was defined and the need could be met. But I think we're also trying to look for a little bit more strategy about how we approach the work of Next. And so that's, I think, a big part of our future. But I thank you all for joining this journey with us. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for you. And I think we're about ready to get into the breakout rooms.
Great. Thank you, Ed. And Caitlin, thanks for setting up the rooms. Why don't you give us 15 minutes and then we'll come back as a larger group. Thanks. Okay, I think we're all back. Right? So yeah, thanks, Caitlin, for getting us in the breakout room. We could have a chance to hear from our guests as well as our new board members. We're likely to take a little bit of time now just to hear from each of the breakout rooms, right? Just for sharing some insights and any interesting connections you made or something that you're going to take away from this. Or if you still have that burning question that didn't get answered or asked yet, take the opportunity to do that while we still have the time. I know I can say one thing from our group was, to me, it's always about connections, right? And I think if you're in the United Way, you can almost play that Kevin Bacon game of 5 degrees separation, right? So almost everybody is connected because of Carole. So like our new executive director, Carole Peters, has certainly been a connect. She's bringing people to the this movement as well. But I think if you talk long enough, you'll find that you're connected to somebody at the United Way, and particularly in United Way Next. So certainly one of the insights I picked up from our group. But who else would like to share? And just go ahead and either raise hand or take yourself off mute and share an insight. Or again, if you have a question still, or if there was a surprise connection that you made being here today.
Well, I learned that Eleanor Brown has 4 degrees. She's a fighter jet pilot. She's no, I like the number of things that she's done. I remember your name, Eleanor, from back in the NAV days as we were talking about in our group. But I'm so glad to be able to make this connection. I don't know that we ever met before. In fact, I doubt we did, because I think you had left the network before I got into the network. But I had heard your name, and it was when I saw you on here, it was great to reconnect with you again. And the last thing I'll say quickly while I'm talking about Eleanor is you made a comment in our group that the context of a community matters when it comes to its ability to get things done or grow. I forget exactly how you said it. And I know we don't have time on this call, but maybe shoot me an email or something. I would love to know from you what 2 or 3 key variables or factors you have found in your work around social work and United Way and everything else when it comes to that context of a community, what have you found in your experience to be the 2 or 3 variables or factors that make the difference or the tipping point? Don't have to answer that right now, but I wanted to let you know immediately I had that question of you, and would love your insight somewhere down the line.
Be glad to. Thanks for your interest.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. Good seeing you too, Patrick. Anyone else? Who else has some insight or something to share, something you learned from your breakout group?
Well, I'll just share real quick with being an alum and not in working for United Way anymore. My hope with this was to stay connected to the organization, see old faces. And I now live in California, came from Illinois. So seeing Marnie's face is great to see somebody that I used to work with. And, it's those connections within the network, right? And hearing Rodney's story and other people's story about how we worked in similar areas or know the same people, that this is meeting expectations. So I'm happy to be here.
Great to hear, Jeremy. Thank you. Any other insights to share? I see Amber here, and Amber served as our executive director. And actually, I think it might have been within 24 hours of me retiring from a United Way. I got an email from Amber saying, "Hey, you're leaving the network. You want to join United Way at the time Retirement Association?" So, Amber, you have a pretty unique perspective. Did you pick up any insights from the breakout group?
Oh, a lot, and it's just great to reconnect. And Paul, if I remember the story, I know I emailed you right away, but it took a few times. But I'm glad to see we roped you in, and now, as I understand it, we've got you slated for the top. So thrilled to hear that.
Yes.
We had a good discussion in our breakout group. I think we talked a lot about the NAV and people who were involved with that, and then also, how lifelong learning and this learning, this appetite for learning is really at the heart of so many of us, and thinking about the future of next, learning from the past and preparing an organization that serves a very different audience than perhaps we have over the last decades or so. So great conversations, and always great to reconnect.
All right, thanks, Amber.
Yeah, Paul, I just wanted to share, you quickly make new friends. So I'm looking at Marnie on the screen. I didn't know Marnie. I wasn't from Illinois, and yet Marnie participated in the local United Way focus groups that we held just a little while ago, and here I see you again. So that's what's fun about Next, is that you meet new people and then they come back around in a different capacity. So thanks for joining us today, Marnie, and thanks for your good insights when we were doing focus groups.
Thanks, Barbara. I said, David, you were ready to, I think, raise your hand. So comment, please.
So Marnie, I'm going to bring what you brought, right? And Marnie mentioned the criticalness, especially for new execs, of the relationships that are built with peers, and that peer-to-peer network and that peer-to-peer support. And then Jeffrey built upon that in thinking through and figuring out, right, how do we as United Way Next support not only one another where we're at today, but also where do we support our network with in those new execs, because it is and Marnie, I'll agree, I had been in the network for 14 years when I became a United Way CEO. And if it had not been for the close network of peers, I would have been gone in less than 6 months. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah,
Well,
Marnie, you want to add to that?
No. So one of the things that my background is coaching. I was a college coach for a while. I've coached for 25 years in some capacity. I officially retired. People always say you're too young to retire, and I'm like, 25 years in coaching, you're ready to retire. But one of the things that I think is a thread is it's always coaching, right? Because you're working with people. And my staff right now, we're reading Unreasonable Hospitality because this is who we want to be in the community. And so this is like one of our leadership development pieces that we're doing internally. But I think it, again, when I look at kind of all the faces, obviously Jeremy, and he was one of those people that I got to know through United Way of Illinois, becoming a CEO in Adams County. But all of you are so tenured, and that can feel a little overwhelming to someone like me, because I'm like, I'm not from the network. I've only been here 2 years. You don't know what you don't know. So I just think like reaching out and the unreasonable hospitality, send somebody a card, send a hello, like, hey, I just wanted to check in on you and see how you were doing. From like the CEO level, because everyone says, it's a lonely place. Like, I think that is a huge thing that even this network could do, to say, how can I help? Or I was thinking of you today, because those words can mean everything, especially if you're having a bad week or even a good week. If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm having a great week, let me tell you about that. And just to know that you had somebody to lean on or reach out to, I think is critical. So it's great if this network kind of looks at that, because it can be a little overwhelming looking around the room and hearing the 14 years of this or that. And you're like, I don't even know if I should, it's like, oh, should I leave the meeting, type of feeling at times. So, but thank you for welcoming me.
Great, thanks. And I am seeing some comments in the chat room about the NAV memories. It's certainly one of those things that seems like there's in common with some of the folks in the group. That peer-to-peer learning, as Eleanor mentions, is something that I think many of us did experience in the network, and certainly something we're trying to recreate or continue in our work as volunteers or members of United Way Next. So it's been critical to our careers in the past, and it should continue to be part of our future as well. So very good. Anyone want to comment beyond that, what's in the chat there, maybe to bring it into a conversation for the broader group here?
Well, Paul, I'll jump into the National Academy for Volunteerism conversation. That's what NAV stood for. And I was amazed at how Jeffrey and I had some memories of the people that ran that program, and along with Eleanor, but how interesting the structure of that program was, and how important it was, I think, to folks in their early careers at that time. I mean, there was the introduction class, but then there was a tiering of fundraising 1, 2, and 3, and major gifts and that kind of thing. And same thing on what was called the planning allocation side, or problem solving, impact work. So there's a lot of great structure to that model that I thought was really important to the huge growth of the United Way during that time. And as we can remember those numbers, they were pretty staggering growth numbers during the 70s, 80s, and perhaps a little bit into the early 90s. But it was a phenomenal program, and not only was it great just in terms of knowledge, but also the peer support thing that I think has been mentioned several times. We met so many great people during those courses, and some of us had the pleasure to teach them, but those just forged really great supportive relationships over time. So great piece of legacy. And our historian, Dick Aft, has a lot of great stories about that, but I think he actually has some great work in his books about the National Academy.
That's great. Yeah, great context there. Thanks. I do want to recognize that we did have one of our board members, current board members, also joined a little bit late, but Diane Lebson is with us. And Diane, I know you weren't able to be part of our breakout groups where we heard about each other and try to make some more connections and identify what some of the guests on today's call are looking for from United Way Next. But perhaps you could just share a little bit your background and becoming a Next board member as well. Open someone's eyes to other opportunities.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. And sorry I'm late. Sometimes work gets in the way of volunteers, and I hate when that happens. Anyway, I'm Diane Lebson. Some of you may know me as Diane Gribb-Soper. I spent 17 years in the movement, most of my time at the organization previously known as United Way of America. But I also built the major giving program for United Way of the National Capital Area. And it's so funny because when Susan Gilmore had called me and asked me if I wanted to serve on the board of United Way Next, I'm like, I'm not a retiree. I'm much too young for that. And, something that Barbara Edmond, we were in a meeting earlier today, and something that Barbara Edmond had shared really has stuck with me all day today in terms of the role that this organization plays. And that is to really support and embrace the network. And that's really what I feel that this group is called to do. Sure, it's a lot about fellowship and, the great relationships and remembering the good old times and doing what we can. But remembering, and Jeffrey, you're right. The word movement still sticks with me very much, because we are more than just an organization. I think that once you work for United Way, it's like once you work for United Way is always with you. So, Paul, thank you for recognizing me. And I do want to recognize all the new board members who are here: Kerri, Jeffrey, David, Rodney, Terry. I'm looking on the order of my screen, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anybody. If I do, I really apologize. But it's nice to see this great crowd.
No, you got them all. You got them all, and well said. And Jeffrey, your comment is definitely appreciated, right? I mean, many of us came into it as a movement, not the network, right? But it is a network of United Ways, but it's a movement for community change and community betterment. And many of us played different roles, how to get that accomplished in our communities. But this is an opportunity, I think, for next to be a movement as well. And so well said. Barbara.
I just want to note what Kerri said, because I was just getting ready to say that out loud, that Add Community did that list. And so, Patrick, your question about what makes community work, I know you're doing a lot of work in that arena, and that's part of what we're doing. We're trying to build this community of people who are connected to United Way. We don't care how or what age you are. And Jeffrey's doing a ton of work with David on what does it mean to belong in a community and to a network. So we have all those big questions we're always struggling with. So just wanted to say that out loud.
Yeah, thanks, Barbara. And we do have a few minutes, and that comment about belong, I think one of the things I've learned in the last year or so, being a member of United Way Next and being a board member in particular, the work of what began as the DEI group, has expanded. And Jeffrey, I think you are the one bringing that letter B, that belonging piece to it, which it was always in my mind. It was always there, but you articulated it better than I've heard before. But you and David have done a lot of great things, bringing that work forward to the board and to the United Way Next general. I don't know if either one of you want to comment on that belonging, because it does get to probably Patrick's question about what's that sort of the secret kernel there for the context of community. And I think belonging absolutely is one of those things. So I don't know if either one of you want to add to what Barbara just said, but she went from movement to communityship, which Kerri noted, to belonging. So it might be an opportunity to just share a little bit about the work of that particular committee of ours, which is such an important group, for United Way Next.
Well, David, you're the co-chair. Why don't you kick that off and I'll fill in, but we want to hear from you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I give the board a significant thumbs up, right? The board of United Way Next didn't make a statement, but they made a commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And that belonging piece is a critical part to it. And that there's a difference between saying something and living it. And United Way Next made that commitment to live in a space where we're not going to be perfect. We know that, but we are going to make every effort to make every member feel like they belong. And that's not simple. It's not easy. We don't have it figured out, and it's a journey. And we know that it's a journey. And we're gonna have successes. We're also gonna stumble along the way. But I applaud the board for really making that commitment and going beyond the statement. So, Jeffrey, thoughts?
Sure, just a couple of things I would add to that. Number one, so let's talk about the year ahead. We're heading into an environment where social and political unrest is going to be the headlines in 2024. And it creates such an opportunity for us as an organization to recognize how we have civil discourse with one another, how we show respect in disagreement. We have an opportunity here to be a national example. And if we don't do that, I think we've missed the mark. We've missed the mark because the country right now needs good examples of what it means for people to feel like they belong, that their voice has been heard, and that civil discourse can take place in this country. And the good news is you have a lot of community problem solvers through United Way Next who are determined to not only talk about what that looks like, but are going to show you what it looks like. And I hope that you have an opportunity to participate with some of our activities this year. We're going to create open spaces. We're going to have topics. We're also going to hear the lived experiences of people who are not like you. And we get to hear about their experiences in a beloved organization in a diversified country to say, okay, what can I learn from the victories and the hurts of these people around us? And that really is the joy of United Way Next. I think what you're going to see here is we're also going to show the way that organizations today can check off boxes that say, oh yeah, we're diverse. Oh yeah, we're equitable. Oh yes, we're inclusive. But that doesn't matter because the outcome, and as United Way people, we know what this word means. The outcome is people feel like they belong in this community. And I think that's pretty exciting. And I hope you'll join us to make that happen.
Great. Thanks, David. Thanks, Jeffrey. I know we're about 5 minutes left in our time here. So what I'd like to do too is recognize, many of us know Carole and are connected to United Way Next because of Carole. Unfortunately, Carole Peters couldn't join us today. She has a family emergency, and so she's in the hospital supporting her husband right now. And so she was okay with us sharing that. So if you know her, you can certainly send some good thoughts and vibes and prayers her way. But so I will turn to Caitlin Guest, who's one of our few staff members for United Way Next, to help share a little bit about what's coming up as well, right? So some of the events that are going to be coming up, as many of you know, right? You got an email for this social hour to meet and greet with our newest board members. There's a lot of other opportunities to engage with United Way Next. So Caitlin, if you could help share some of the upcoming events. Let's use our last few minutes just to whet the appetite and to share some opportunities for people to engage.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So we have a few events coming up in April, but the one that I want to highlight is Unlock the Power of AI for You and Your Nonprofit Endeavors. So that's with Dr. Patricia Clary and Jasmine Garcia, and they're going to be discussing and demonstrating AI that enhances nonprofit work. And we have a list of all of our events on our events page on the website. And then also you could be checking your emails for event updates. So I'll put that link in the chat if you want to check out any events or register for anything throughout the rest of the year.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I know I can say, personally, I've taken advantage of a lot of the different webinars and events and opportunities. Because what I've heard is, I started because of the connection piece, right? Because I wanted to stay connected. Then it turned into wanting to serve and still be part of this community and to still, as Ed, I think, said, be relevant, right? We want to still be able to give back. So that's been a piece of it. But I would say I've probably equally, if not more, have received from the different opportunities to meet with people, to be part of these events, and to learn more about myself, to learn more about what I'm doing and where I'm going. So really, you can kind of engage in any way and really get what you need out of United Way Next. The last thing I attended, which was real recent, was a wellness series. So one of the opportunities and series is wellness. I know, Kerri, you have actually done, I think you may have done one of the wellness things a year ago or something, but this was a young United Way Next member who just happened to really, I think, hit a home run with the webinar she hosted around how to stay present, with so many balls in the air, right? So it's just, it's something that whether you're working, whether you're working part-time, consulting, whether you're fully retired, there's things we can learn from some of these opportunities to engage as well. So it's not just about giving back or making connections. There's opportunities for you to learn and grow. And as you can see, I think from this group, there's a lot of talent on the screen here with a lot of different sets of experiences. So that's our hope, is that we connect folks to each other to better ourselves and better our community of United Way leaders. So very good here. I know Kerri, you put something into the chat there, so folks were able to see some of that. I see some comments on that too. Again, continuing the conversation around belonging and transformation, as you say. So, certainly an important topic for United Way Next, and I think organizations across the world. So, thanks for those additional comments. We've got 2 minutes. Any other final comments or comments, questions, anything from anyone here? Jeremy, I appreciate you saying this, met your expectations, right? And so becoming a part of Next, we hope it can grow and strengthen, your future as well. And, but any other final comments, final words from anyone?
Well, I think Carole would want us to encourage any of you who know prospective members, please invite them. For those of you who have influence with currently serving CEOs like Rodney, and Rodney's done a great job of supporting Next as an organization, but for United Way CEOs who, and Carole has all this information, but who may be opportunistic or opportunities for us to have them join the network, help us with that conversation or step up and ask. We would appreciate that.
Well, very good. Thanks, Ed. And we'll leave that as the final words. We're at time. Really appreciate everybody joining us, taking time out of your busy days to meet and greet with our newest board members and to hear from each other. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day, great rest of your week.